Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
We are speaking with John Petrucci. The new album is Terminal Velocity. It comes out the day after my birthday, so what a great way to celebrate, by the way. And as we say here in Montreal, bonjour, John. How are you?
Bonjour. I'm doing great, and happy birthday early.
Early, yeah. You'll be celebrating a new record, and I will be celebrating a new year in a sense. But talk to me a little bit about this album in terms of how it comes together, because we all know the story. You got Mark Portnoy. It's been 15 years. What sort of compelled you at this time to say, okay, I need to put something out that says John? Doesn't say Dream Theater, doesn't say something else. It says John.
Sure. Well, you mentioned the 15 years. I mean, for some reason, the interest in this type of thing kind of has ramped up over the last several years, where there's really not an interview that has gone by where I don't get asked, when are you going to do another solo album? So it's been on my mind. I started playing some of the music, the new music live, and doing events like guitar camps where I'm playing, solo material and realizing I don't have a lot of solo material. And so just kind of everything was culminating to like, I really should do this. If I'm going to do it, I just need to find like the perfect window of time. And actually before COVID hit and everything, I had planned on starting this in March of this year. I just didn't realize I would have, a full chunk of endless time to actually complete it. And in that sense, I'm glad I did, because I don't like doing things piecemeal. It's kind of the way I did the first solo album. So I'm glad I had that time to do it.
You had this moment. So okay, let's quickly talk about suspended animation. It was
Sure.
done partly because you were going on the G3 tour.
Right, exactly.
So when you're doing Terminal Velocity and you're talking about having more solo material, is that indicative of you wanting to do another G3 or being part or going out on a solo tour? I mean, why have the solo material if you're not going to use it, in a sense?
Right. Well, I mean, anything's possible. Of course, G3 is Joe Satriani's, that's his project. And every time he asks, I always say yes, because it's so much fun. And who would say no to that? And I've done so many of them. And, partly because of that, because, even the last one I did, I'm still playing the same material, it's become this running joke. And that's why I kind of incorporated two of the new songs, Happy Song and Glassy Eyed Zombies, into those tours. I'm also doing things like the guitar camps where I'm playing a concert. And, I don't really have plans of a solo tour per se, but if these different opportunities and things come up and continue to come up, as the world gets to a better place, then I just thought it would be nice to have new music to play. So it's not as if
Right.
I'm actually planning a solo tour, but just nice having catalog now.
Look at that.
And,
You're a catalog
yeah,
artist.
I'm a catalog artist. And speaking of suspended animation, I actually, as part of the bigger plan, I made it available digitally and streaming for the first time since I released it back in 2005. So it's catalog. It actually says release date 2005 when you go onto Apple Music or whatever.
When you did suspend an animation and you've done interviews since, you sort of suggested that it was to sort of take stock of where you were in your guitar playing.
Mm-hmm.
15 years later with Terminal Velocity, where are you in terms of your guitar playing, and how have you improved, and where do you get that inspiration from? Is it still the sort of a measuring stick as to where you are musically?
I mean, that's a good way of putting it. Whether that happens like on purpose or not, it's kind of bound to happen. I think I kept the same sort of mentality with Terminal Velocity that I had with suspended animation, meaning that I wanted to do solo albums that were really solo albums that kind of just featured guitar, didn't have a lot of distractions, guitar, bass, drums, and showed some different sides of my playing that you might not hear necessarily in Dream Theater. And so I went with that same mentality. But of course, over 15 years, I'd like to think that I got better on the instrument, that I got better at producing, and that I got better at, finding that that tone that's been in my head and making that happen. And that's, partially due to being fortunate enough to develop signature instruments and, amplifiers, Ernie Ball, Music Man, Mesa Boogie, and, actually having the things that I didn't have 15 years ago that, well, I did have Ernie Ball Music Man 15 years ago. I shouldn't say that, but developing those things, to the point where it's so dialed in, even the last Dream Theater record, Distance Over Time, with, that guitar sound and the technique that we carried right into this, because it's just like all the pieces are of the puzzle, they fit. The formula is right.
The formula. Well, let's talk formula, and then we'll talk producing. But in terms of song structure, when we think of sort of a classic rock, vocal song, it's verse, chorus, you're out. How do you approach the structure of these songs? And I'm going to ask you sort of the silly question, but how do you sort of know when to begin and when to end in an instrumental album?
Yeah, no, it's not a silly question. I think that, like, for me, when I'm writing new music, it either comes from like some idea that I had collected at some point, over time, like Terminal Velocity, the opening track. That main riff was just, I was playing guitar one day and I stumbled across that, and I was like, this is cool, let me record it. And I just always record these little ideas and I collect them. And so sometimes a starting point is just simply kind of being organized and saying, okay, here are all these ideas I have. Oh, wait, that one, that's cool. I could picture that as its song opening. And then I start to build the song, and it just happens organically, I guess, as to the structure and when it feels like it should be over. I always try to make the songs interesting for me to listen to. All right. So if there's ever a point in the song where there's a lull or it gets boring or not, not motivating or whatever, then I know I need to make a change. And so I use myself as like the barometer of like, am I interested in what's going on or not? Yeah, especially with instrumental guitar music, it's really, really important. There's no vocals. There's no, on my albums, there are no guests, so you're not looking forward to like, oh, another guitar player is playing on here or whatever. It's all me. So I got to be careful. I have to make sure I'm keeping the interest of the listener up and myself. And that's sort of the way that I produce
these albums, the Dream Theater albums and these albums. In terms of playing, is it thought out though, or is it somewhat improvisational? And I'll just tell you, and since we mentioned Steve Vai before, I interviewed him once on his bus, and he was at his computer, and he was tapping away, and I thought, my God, what an ass! He's not paying attention. And
right.
Well, but that's it, and this is how the story ends. We finished the interview, and he answered all the questions. And he turns the computer around, and on it there was music. The notes that he had written out. He goes, sorry, I had a song in my head and I wrote it out, and I'm like, wow, what a genius, right?
That's awesome.
So wow, the ask comment, right? So the ask comment, we take it away, we apologize, we go, wow, what a genius. But is that how you approach it, where you sit down with a program or whatever and you write stuff out and you get the music notation? Or do you sort of just say, all right, I'm going to play, I have this melody in my head? I mean, how do you sort of get it from the head to the recording?
Right. Well, I don't write out the music notation like that. No.
See, Steve's got something on you.
Yeah, he sure does. It's something that, like, for me, I have the training. I went to Berkeley and did all that, but I never like followed through and used it. So my skills at that are weak. So that's not the first place I go to when trying to put music down. What I do is I record it right away. So I just use my phone. If I'm playing it, whether something comes to me outside of having a guitar with me, or more often while I'm playing, I'll just kind of stumble onto something. This happened yesterday too. It just immediately, I'm like, that's cool. Like, don't ignore it. Don't ignore that little voice in your head that says record it. And the easiest way is just with my phone. I put on voice memos and memos, record it, label it. Then when it comes time to write the music, I think I'm very sort of deliberate. Like, I'm going to construct this song now. So I'm in the studio, I'm set up, I'm in a comfortable place. There's an open Pro Tools session and the ability to, uh, get a tempo map going, and I'll start to build it. It's like building a house, and that's the way I approach it.
In terms of producing, because you mentioned producing, now you obviously produce this one. You had Andy Sneap in there too, and Jimmy T. But talk to me about having your ears on your project and not having that outside set of ears, because sometimes it can be important for somebody to say, "Hey, this is not working. This is not good. You should push this. You should, layer that."
Sure.
Talk to me about doing it yourself, and is there an advantage and a disadvantage to not having outside ears?
Right. Well, there could be both. I mean, I think in the case of Dream Theater and me producing Dream Theater, there's more pieces of the puzzle because there are more guys. There's vocals, lyrics, keyboards, and we're writing music together. And it's, I have to kind of look out for everybody as a producer. I have to keep my eye on the ball, make sure that we're following through with what our plan was for the record, and hopefully make sure that everybody feels happy and heard, and creatively satisfied. It's kind of part of that role. You can't get too tunnel vision in your own way. It doesn't really work in a band, I don't think, especially when you're in the band producing. Maybe for an outside producer that works, but in the case of my solo album, it's just me. So there's not that type of pressure. And I feel like even though I don't have the sounding boards, it's okay because I really know what I want. And if anything, I don't need distractions from that. Jimmy T, who is the engineer, is wonderful too. And, since I wrote the whole record and recorded it with him, manning the computer. I mean, he was great at giving me that kind of feedback when I needed it. In fact, I credited him on this record for additional production because he was really wonderful in that sense. In the case of Andy Sneap, I mean, he's a mix engineer, mix and masterer, and that is a whole that brings it to the next level, and it's a whole nother step where I try not to infringe upon. Because I hired him because he does an amazing job. He knows what the hell he's doing. He has an incredible discography, and he's a guitar player. And I'm like, I have to be really careful there because I don't want to just be too much in my own little bubble. Like, I've been working on this for 3 months, and now I'm handing it over, and then tie his hands and not let him do his thing. So I really try to step back and be like, do your thing. And if there's something that's really not in the direction that I'm feeling, then we'll talk about it. But Andy was wonderful and very, very detailed oriented, and took so much time to do this. He was really generous with his time to do this,
and probably saved Accept. I mean,
right.
He turned that let's be honest.
Absolutely. And the Accept stuff sounds amazing. I mean, he was sending me stuff. We were at one point getting to the mastering phase, and he was sending me some of the stuff that he did as a comparison, and I didn't recognize the song. He had sent a bunch of songs, and I'm like, what is that? It sounded so cool. It's like, that's the Accept album. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's unbelievable. Not that I would expect anything less, but it just, I don't know. I wasn't prepared
for that. I don't think anybody was prepared for Blood of Nation. And by the way, I keep saying, if Kiss or Aerosmith or even some of these bands, even Megadeth, they should use Andy or Metallica. I mean, use Andy.
I agree. Andy is the man. He knows what he's doing.
He really is. Let me continue on producing just for a second. When you were, of course, or not when you were in Dream Theater, you still are. But
is there something I don't know?
I was talking to the guys before. Right. No, but you were producing some of the albums with Mike. There was this production team with Mike. So when he leaves as a drummer, it's not just that, it's this production team. But then you go on and produce the albums by yourself. Right. What was that like for you in terms of the transition from being a duo producing team to being the only guy? And how important was Mike, not as just a drummer, we know that, but how important was he for you to sit in the booth and go, okay, we're making this album, back and forth?
Right. I mean, very important. We worked together really closely on those albums, and shared a vision on what we were looking for and how they should turn out. Um, there's no doubt about that. When he left the band, you're right. My production partner left as well. I kind of like took it on as a challenge, but discovered that it was something I was really, really into. I really enjoyed it. Um, yes, I had more weight on my shoulders and more responsibility, and producing a record, we're talking about certain things that are a little abstract right now as far as the vision of the album and you know getting from point A to point B, but there's also a lot of technical stuff and managerial stuff and clerical stuff that goes along with doing all that. You're kind of in charge of all of it. So yeah, I had a lot more workload dumped on my shoulders. And then you kind of realize, man, you realize what somebody was doing with you after they leave. You're like, oh, I never realized I had to do all this stuff as well. But again, it's something that I ended up really enjoying and continue to enjoy. And I'm just really happy and thankful that my band members trust me in that position. At any given
Right.
time, they could have been like, John, you know what? We're not into this. We're going to get, so and so
Right.
to come in.
We're
And
hiring Rick Rubin.
right, exactly. And they've been wonderful and they trust me. And I think, I think that the success that we've had as a band since I've been producing solely has hopefully backed that up as well. So they trust me in that position, which is cool.
Now, you have done recent interviews where you've talked about, well, Mike coming back and all this, but would you consider him as a production team to come back and have the next Dream Theater with, I mean, it may or may not be awkward, but it also may or may not be fantastic and great.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting notion for you to bring up, but honestly, no, I wouldn't
Right.
consider that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, I'm selfish about it at this point. I don't want anybody coming in.
It's mine. It's mine.
Exactly. Don't take it away.
Don't take it away, but fair enough. Okay, so let's quickly talk about Mike. He leaves the band. He goes off and does the Twisted Sister stuff, which I thought was fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
What did it mean to you when he left on sort of a personal level? Because here you are, you're battling it out on the undercard of bills. You're in bars, you're in whatever small clubs, and you've got this team. One of the team members leaves. Was it difficult on a personal level to just say, "Wow, we're losing this great talent, but I'm losing my brother"?
Yeah, of course. No doubt about it. I mean, we met when we were, 18 years old. Met him at Berkeley. John and I went there out of high school, met Mike. He happened to be a fellow Long Islander, New Yorker, and we formed a band. And we were in a band for 25 years. I mean, the history of Dream Theater. So yeah, that was a blow. That was a blow, both uh, as a band member and as a friend, because you are brothers when you're in a band, and you spend a lot of time together. And not only do you spend a lot of time together, but your lives are so intertwined. Um, our families all grew up together. All our wives were in the same band, where when we got married, the wedding parties were like our band and their band. All the kids grew up together, so it's a big, big thing. So thankfully, that didn't go away over the years. And of course, when a band member leaves like that, there's a lot to deal with. There's a lot of business, even if it's amicable, things can get like sticky, and there's a lot to work out. So you get through it, you work it out, and then there's a little bit of like breather time. Okay, time to pick up our pieces and get our, professional life back in motion, which we did right away with Mike Mangini, thankfully, and realized, okay, everything's going to be okay, and we're moving on, and great things happened. And then as that time is passing, it's a little more contact with Mike Portnoy, a little more hanging out, spending holidays, all the while, like I said, the families have all been friends, the kids are all friends. And then eventually we get to the point we're at now, where I'm doing a project. Hey,
Yeah, there's
I should
Mike.
get Mike to play on it, and nothing's weird, nothing's awkward, everything's cool. We're brothers, and any of the nonsense that might have,
Right. Because
you know,
there was a little
emerged.
bit of nonsense in the
Yeah.
press for a couple of years, but I mean, listen, when people are hurt, we say things that we don't always mean, whatever.
Yeah, and I pride myself in never having gone down that
Correct.
road at all.
Right.
I have a lot of respect for Mike, and I that's never something that's not my personality, and that's something that I would do. So, those are decisions that you make, and then you're thankful because you know you look where we are now.
Yeah, look where
You
we
know,
are now.
I
And
I get to have my friend who I met when I was 18 years old play on my solo album. He did a killer job. And there you go.
yeah, and that's what I want to circle it back to real quick before we have to hang up. But Terminal Velocity, of course, does have Mike on it.
Yeah.
You have said that a lot of the drums, were pre-programmed. There were drum tracks, and he sort of
Yeah.
came in and mimicked them or copied them or brought them to life, however you want to put it. Was there any room for him to improvise and put on his stamp? Did he sort of have to stick to these demos? Talk to me a little bit about the drum tracks and sort of what kind of freedom he had or didn't have.
Sure. Well, the way that I wrote the album, I spent 2 months either writing new music or recording for the first time older music. Like I said, Happy Song and Glasshead Zombies that maybe I played live or I had an old demo or whatever, but I never actually recorded. So I fully recorded the real Keeper guitars as I was writing the music and as I was recording those older songs. And as I would write the guitar parts and record, me and Jimmy T would program drums. Jimmy T is a great programmer. He did most of it. We're thinking this feel here. He plays bass. I play a little bass. Let me put a bass part down, built the songs. By the end of 2 months, the songs were done. The real guitars were recorded, fully tracked, and there was drum programming and bass playing on it. It sounded like a finished album. I could have released it then. It wouldn't have been as good, but it was pretty damn good if I ever play you that stage.
Those
And
demos, yeah.
that's what I sent to Dave and Mike. So with Mike, he asked me, he's like, well, do you want me to play exactly what you programmed? He's like, I'm not really that kind of a drummer. And I was like, no, I want you to do your thing for sure. And he's like, okay, cool. He couldn't get around learning the songs. He had to learn the songs, map them out. If there were specific tight instrumental lines, I wanted him to play those just like they were written. That was fine. But from the moment of like, say, Happy Song, okay, go, and the click counts in, all the fills and everything that he's doing, I mean, that's all him. And that's how it came to life. I would say that a lot of the feels on the record, as far as if it was in double time, halftime, etc., he was taking my guidance on what I programmed because that's how I was imagining the parts. But he did his thing, and as he did his thing, he was like copying some of the guitar moments that I did on the record. Dave LaRue was getting the stuff at the same time, and we were communicating. Hey, Dave, Mike just laid down this drum track. Can you play that drum fill he did when he goes into a triplet? Can you match that? And so that process of Mike approaching my already written, pre-recorded guitar in a way that was more off the cuff, more instinctual, more spontaneous, and Dave LaRue sort of like playing to Mike's parts, in the end made it sound like we kind of all played together and the songs all have this great sort of spirit and energy and life. And I love that. And I was afraid about that or concerned about that because, like I said, I had recorded all the guitars. They couldn't be moved. I wasn't going to change anything. Tempos couldn't have been adjusted. That was it. You got to play to that. And so that's
yeah.
a long answer to your question.
But Mr. Portnoy is a pro. He knows what he's doing.
He's a pro. He came in. He nailed everything. He was great. He's so funny. It's like he doesn't do a lot of takes. He kind of like will do one or two takes. He's like, I think I got it. Let's come in and we'll listen. And it's like, yeah, he did a killer job. It was great. And we got to hang out, which was fun. He came up to my studio and for about a week. So we had a good time.
Yeah, and we learned that neither you nor Mike should record with Mutt Lange because that probably wouldn't work out too good. One take?
Right.
No. And I'll finish on this. In terms of, we jokingly at the front said catalog artists and all this, but
Yeah.
with this time off and with Dream Theater and all and things closed, do you start saying, okay, maybe I just work the next 6 months on the next new solo album or get a head start on the next new Dream Theater? Where do we sort of go on this forced break?
Yeah. Well, you're right. Yeah, I mean, not a solo album. That's done. I need 15 more years for the next one. But yeah, in the case of Dream Theater, sure, we've had to kind of pivot and adjust our schedule. I mean, we still had touring that was supposed to happen in the spring and the summer, and so with that not happening in the foreseeable future, we're talking. There's so many different things being floated around out there, and things are different in different countries. But we're talking possibly over a year from now. Obviously, we're not going to sit around and do nothing, and so we didn't plan on writing a new studio album this year, but we will, because that's what we do. We're creative people. We're not going to sit around. If we can't perform live, then we're going to be creative. So that's how we're approaching this.
That's and by the way, in terms of touring and stuff, some of the European countries and some of those other countries are opening up, but they're not allowing Americans to fly in. So you're sort of like, oh, wow, I can play St. Louis, great,
Right.
So is that a challenge, though, not knowing that even if other countries open, you may not be allowed to fly there,
Oh, yeah. There's tons of challenges. I mean, this is something that none of us have ever faced, and not just us by Dream Theater.
No, fans, me.
Every band on the planet. It doesn't matter your level. Everything was halted and stopped, and even when it goes back to some sort of semblance of normal, what is that going to look like? That's also a big question. Are the venues going to be at half or less capacity? Or, what are ticket sales going to be like? What's travel going to be like? And then if it all opens back up, is it all going to open back up at once? And then every band on the planet is going to try to book shows.
Yeah.
And, there will be no tour buses or crews or hotel rooms or venues to book.
But that's actually a problem because, a
Right?
lot of bands have held off releases. They go, well, we're going to release it when we can tour. And it's like,
it's all going to come out at the same time.
right, we're going to have 187 albums in February of 2021. You're going to, well, we're going to fall in the crack. Well, yeah, you are, because there's
you have to kind of expect that, it's like I said, everybody's in the same position. I've said this before, but, like, as a musician, I'm able to make new music, and there are opportunities for me career-wise to still be proactive.
Yes.
My heart goes out to the crews that are grounded, that aren't able to work, that all of us depend on so much. I know it's really hard for those guys. So, we got to get to some position where everybody can work again.
And you're right, with the kind of music you make, there's opportunities in soundtracks and films and video games. You've got all kinds of outlets. The guy that's pushing the road case, anyway, my heart goes out to all of them, and hopefully we'll get back to normal. We'd love to see Dream Theater on the road. As we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome. We always have fun in Montreal. What a great city. What great audiences when Dream Theater or G3 pass through. Man, you guys.
Montreal loves the prog, man.
Yeah, we got to get back. We got to stay safe, and hopefully we'll get past this. We'll get through it.
Yeah, back to Place des Arts. There you go.
That's it. Awesome, man.
Thank you, sir. Cheers.
You got it. All right.
Perfect. Let me turn that off.